Hi team, it's Kyle here from Border South, and I'm here to explain to you why I think triathlon needs shorter cranks. Now specify that I'm talking about triathlon, I'm not talking about cycling at all. So triathlon is very specific to the position we're in, and we have to run off the bike. So this is only specific to triathletes. And there's three reasons why I think that we need shorter cranks. And I'm going to discuss those, but the very first point that I want to go over is the amount of stress on the body and the sustainability that we can gain from shorter cranks. Now, I've personally been through this in 2019. I changed my crank set. I used to be on 172.5s. I've gone down and down over a period of time, but in 2019, I made a big jump and I went to a 145mm crank. So I actually had to buy junior cranks. It's that short. You can't really get them standard at all with any of the major brands. So in 2019, I did Ironman Port Macquarie, Ironman Australia, and the next month I did Ironman Cairns, and the next month I did Challenge Roth. And I pulled up absolutely fine from each of those races, and I was really surprised. And one of the things I can put it down to is a shorter crank. Now, I've had back issues and hamstring issues post-race previously, and I had none of those after any of those races. So that was a big change for me, and I think I was able to handle more load because of it. And also went on to compete in Hawaii in October and pulled up fine from that. So that's my personal experience with shorter cranks, and now I'm just going to explain to you why I think that occurred. So the first one, decreasing stress. So what I'm talking about here is the stress placed on the lumbopelvic region. Now, when your hip angle is very acute, it's at a sharp angle, it puts excess stress on your lower back and your glutes. So it puts them at more of an end of range and subsequently increases stress through your upper back and neck, but also your hamstring. So these areas are put under a lot of stress with an acute hip angle. Most people have probably felt that, and the first thing that you do to alleviate that stress, well, you either sit up, so you go from the time trial position, you get out of the bike origami flattened position, and then you go onto the bars and relieve the stress by opening your hip angle. So your body tells you that's what it needs to do. Now, the other thing we do, or often see with triathletes, is they will shuffle forward on the saddle. So this effectively decreases your leg length, so it'll take pressure off your hamstring because you'll have a little bit more bend in your knee, and you will also be opening up your hip angle. So sliding forward opens your hip angle, takes the pressure off your hamstrings, and then immediately feel a little bit better. So our bodies are instinctively telling us this, so it's about time we started listening. So instead of shuffling forward on the saddle or waiting till there's enough pain to sit upright, you can achieve this with a shorter crank. So what do I mean when I say a shorter crank? Well, if this is a normal 172.5 setup, if you shorten your crank, let's just say by a centimetre, which would be 162.5, then your pedal at the top of the dead centre will be, your foot will be at a lower point, which also means your knee will be at a lower point. So effectively your hip angle will then be greater. So there'll be less stress on all those structures. Also at the bottom of the pedal stroke, your foot will be shorter. So you're then going to have less stress on your hamstrings because you've got a shorter length. But if your leg length is correct at the bottom of the stroke, then you shouldn't have any problems there. So if we've shortened it, that means that you can then raise the saddle. So you can raise the saddle by the difference in that, which means once you raise the saddle, you're also going to be dropping to your aero bars. So raise the saddle up effectively you'll be more aerodynamic going down to the aero bars. So that's another cause and effect from shortening your crank length. So you'll get more aggressive and you'll get more aerodynamic, whether you like it or not. But you can compensate that by raising the cockpit up in front. So if we're able to have less stress through that area, it means you're going to be able to sit for longer. It means you're going to be more comfortable, and I think that's more sustainable. And particularly in triathlon, it's about sustainability. It's not about going flat out. It's an aerobic sport, and we're out there for a long time. So decreased stress in training, not just racing, will allow you to recover better, do more training, and be fresher for when you need to perform. So that's the number one reason I think we should have shorter cranks. Now, the second reason is I think it's the optimal power position. So people will worry about decreasing that range of motion to have a smaller circle when they're cycling. If we forget about cycling for a second and think about how strong your legs are and what position you need to be to perform that strength. So if you're going to do a leg press, do you want your knees coming to your chest before you do a maximal push? So if you can picture yourself laying back, do you want to have all the weight on your chest and then push out? It's usually stronger in the mid-range. So it's the same with a single leg jump. You need your muscles to operate in the best length tension relationship.
Yeah, buddy.
The position that your limbs need to be in is nowhere near what we think we need with cycling. So another example is if you're going to kick down a door as strong as you can, you're going to wind up your leg and then push out as strong as you can. You don't need much range of motion for that. And also your leg is not going to go in a circle. You just go bang straight out and your leg can come straight back. So we don't need a big circle to be efficient. It's just the mechanism of a bike. So if you shorten the circle, it doesn't mean that the power's just dissipated somewhere. Our bodies can operate like this very easily, hence why you can leg press very large weights. So your body is adaptable, it'll get used to that pattern of movement. And I'll just show you the other reason people don't want to convert to a shorter crank. So this is a 172.5. My 145s come to about here, so that's where the axle will be to put the cleat in. People will argue that, well, there's increased leverage because the arm is longer, so it takes less effort with an increased lever. That is true. So if I have a shorter axis to push from, I'll have to increase my torque. However, the other thing that happens is the actual circumference of a shorter crank is less. With a longer crank, it's more, so you have to cover more distance to go a full pedal circle. So to keep up at the same RPM, your foot on a longer crank has to have more speed, so the foot speed is increased, which increases the metabolic cost. So it's actually going to be easier, but you have to work harder to get it around. So there's a number of areas where one's harder, one's easier, one's harder. But at the end of the day, it all balances out because you have a mechanism by using the chain rings at the front and the cassette at the back gives you a gain ratio which actually moves the back wheel. So at the end of the day, all we want to do is move the back wheel. So the setup with the chain ring and the cassette at the back is what determines how fast we're going to go at the end of the day. So there's a lot of compensations throughout the system that basically make it a level playing field. And research has shown between 120 and 220 millimeters for a crank, the power is relatively the same. So you're not losing anything. The only thing would be the jump in range of motion, but our bodies are highly adaptable, so it won't take long to get used to that pedal circle, and it's something that you get far more out of relieving stress in that position and just compensating by your gearing and neurological adaptation than worrying about the leverage of your crank. So there's a lot more to it than that. But the biggest thing we have is triathlon has bike origami applied to it. So we're in a flat position for long periods of time and I don't think we're not probably built to do that. So we've got to make the instrument work around that. So the third reason why we should have shorter cranks is that you get free aerodynamic gains. So with the shorter crank, one thing that changes is your chain rings are actually smaller. So if you have to create more torque at the pedal, you require a smaller chain ring in effectively the same cassette at the back. So say you're a 53 tooth at the front and 11 at the back in a 172.5. You will need, in the same setup with 145, you will need a 50 tooth chain ring at the front with the same 11 tooth cog at the back to get the same amount of movement at the back wheel. So you need less of a size on the chain ring at the front. So there's less wind to catch. So smaller setup at the front, your actual foot circumference and the diameter is going to be less, it's going to be shorter, so there's less wind to catch. Your knee is not coming up as high, so there's less wind to catch. And also from behind, you'll be more stable. So if your knees are coming up high, your body will compensate and it'll tilt. So it'll offer more stability as well in this position. So if you're moving less, then there's less wind hitting your body. Same with your knees. If your knees are having to go in and out, then there's more volatile movement, there's going to be more wind catching it. So if you're more stable, more silent, you're catching less wind, and I said earlier that your drop is going to be greater, so you're actually going to go faster because there's less wind, getting scooped into the front because you're going to be tilting down a little bit more. So that just all happens automatically with a crank change to a shorter length. So no Pilates or no extra exercises to get that, it just happens with the setup. So for those three reasons, I think we should all have shorter cranks. The only thing that I can think of is that you've got to be a bit more creative in sourcing that crank because they don't come standard with Shimano or SRAM or anything like that. But overall, everyone wants to go faster and get them more comfortable, and this is a way to achieve it. If you have any questions, just hit me up in the comments below. Otherwise, keep researching, keep asking the questions, and have a think about, the next time you're on your bike, am I really comfortable? Thanks, guys.